Okay.
Welcome, friends, to the Crazy as Usual podcast with Donna Carlson. And today we have Karole Campbell, who was most recently nominated for the Southern Colorado Women's Chamber Accolades Award, Business Leader of the Year. I have to tell you, Karole, I didn't mention this earlier. I was also nominated for Business Leader of the Year, but I didn't make the final list. And when I
Oh
saw
gosh.
the list of women, I went, oh gosh, I would vote for her and her.
I did the same thing. I was like, wow, I'm in a really interesting group of women. How did I get here?
I know, but isn't it amazing when you're recognized for the hard work? Building a business, I had to call you afterwards and congratulate you for the nomination and also welcome you to the podcast because Madwoman Marketing and Crazy as Usual just belong in the same
It does feel like a
sandbox.
fit.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you started your business, 2013, right?
Yep, 2013. So I spent my whole career in media sales, pretty much always in television. And the last 4 or 5 years, I worked for a corporate, and I felt like we'd lost the heart of dealing with our customers. And
Mhm.
it's interesting. I still have friends in media sales, and I every day see why I left. That when I started, it was like, let's go out, have a lot of fun, take good care of our clients, and make a lot of money in the process. And by the time I left, it was like, fill out this report, damn the clients, they're just getting in our way and that sort of thing. And so I started examining what else I could do, and the first go-to is always, we'll just go to another media property. And I went, been there, done that. I honestly had never really wanted to own an agency,
Yeah.
because my perception at the time was there's like 8 good accounts in Colorado Springs and like 15 agencies fighting over them.
Right.
But what happened is I started having clients ask me, or tell me, gosh, can you recommend an agency? And I'd say, oh, I recommend, oh, I don't want to work with them anymore. Or they'd say, gosh, I wish you were an agency. And sometimes I'm a good listener. And so when you ask how I got the name, I do my best thinking when I hike my dogs in the morning. And so
Uh-huh.
one morning I was like, I had a boss that once called me a human border collie. So I was like, oh, I'll call my business human border collie. I thought, I'm going to be the only one that gets that.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Nobody
might
else will
be.
find that funny, then, and my Google search will come up with like breeders and stuff like that. So it wouldn't have made sense. But I wanted something in the business name that reflected me. And I always use the expression working out like a mad woman, running around like a mad woman, and whatever else. And so it was a bit of a road to get to. So one of the things is you always want to kind of get approval or validation. So I started asking people, what do you think? And man, my parents hated the name. I had some friends in business that were like, oh, you got to call it the Campbell Group. I had a friend that told me the Campbell Group would be good because it sounds like there's a man there and you need to have a man behind it. And I was like, what year is this?
What
Right?
year is this?
2013.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so yeah, I mean, and I talked to, I probably had as many people who loved it as hated it. And ultimately, I have a dear friend, Laurel Prudhomme, who used to work for the Downtown Partnership, who's a
Yeah.
super smart creative. And she said, look, you can call it whatever you want, like whatever is a reflection of you and how you do business and how you're going to work. So in 13, sorry, not 13 years, 11 years, I probably have had 2 pieces of business that I haven't gotten. One in particular, because they said, well, she doesn't take herself seriously. Um, okay, if you can't get past the name, you're going to hate me. So, it's worked out great for me. And I'm
Yeah,
really happy with it. I probably get more compliments on it than I do get like, why did you name yourself that?
exactly. So you had monkeys just in the branding process and
100%.
you won out. You said this is who I am. And I think the beautiful thing that you said is the name will automatically eliminate those who are just not synergistic with you.
Totally. Totally.
And I believe the same thing. People have told me, oh, now that you wrote that book, Crazy as Usual, and you do the podcast and you do the community forum on mental health at work, people are going to have you like sidelined as the crazy person. I went, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because so many women identify with the monkeys that tell us we're not good enough, smart enough, qualified enough. And yet you were, and you said it doesn't matter what I call it because people are getting me. And
Right.
tell me how
Well,
you
and
crafted the agency though. Did you hire employees? Did you pull in contractors?
Yeah. So one of the things, like I said, once in a while I listen, and I had noticed that I had friends of different phases of the advertising business that weren't getting work. So I had a friend who was a really talented media buyer, and when she would talk to somebody, they well, why do I need a media plan?
Yeah.
Or videographers or creative designers or website builders. And what I realized is that my talent was sales. And what's super interesting
Yeah.
is so many businesses understand why they would write themselves a check or why they want to make money, but they don't understand why someone else would write them a check. And so I kind of came at it, and that's where the marketing strategies comes in, is I know a little bit, I know just enough to be dangerous about a lot of marketing things. And I know people that are way smarter and more talented than I am. And so really my business model came from the notion that I could actually make money building business for my friends. And
Uh-huh.
so everyone I have is subcontractors. I've not taken the leap into employees. I didn't want the head count. I didn't want the monthly expense and all that kind of thing. And when I started looking into opening my own business, I was making ridiculous money at Comcast because I'd been there a while and I built
Mhm.
up a good list. And so everything was jumping off a precipice. And so I was looking, I'd had a great interview doing development at UCCS, which would have been a huge pay cut. And I had one of those really rare moments of clarity where I went, and I was super excited about the notion of working with UCCS. I loved the leadership, all those things. But I realized that I really liked the work equals results of commission sales,
Yeah.
and that most people who open a business don't have that background of having to sell something every day to justify their worth. And so I
Yeah.
went, okay, that's an asset.
Yeah.
And then I started to look into the fact that, you know, people trusted me to like talk through marketing with them. And I had a couple of clients that were really good friends that I went to and said, so if I were to do an agency, would you? And the answer was a resounding yes.
Yeah.
So since then, what I've discovered, there's a lot of people that have wanted to work with me, but didn't want to when I sold, television ads, sales or cable or whatever else.
Mhm.
Um, and I realized I was my secret sauce.
Yeah.
So once I sat down with the numbers, to kind of get over the fear. So you talk about the monkey and the fear.
Yeah.
I'm a single person. My kids were grown, but still there was not a second income, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I sat down and I went, okay, what's it going to take to pay the mortgage, keep the lights on? If the transmission goes, I'm toast. If,
Mhm.
oh, and then the third thing was I wanted to leave the country once a year. So those were the three things I wanted to do. And when
Priority.
I really sat down and just broke it down to like bottom line, I really only needed to make gross $3,000 a month. And I went, okay, so I take the leap, and the worst that could happen is I go to zero, and that's scary, right?
Mhm.
But the next worst is then I have to go out and get a job for $36,000 a year. Well, can I do that? Yeah, I can do that. Will I like it? No, right? Like all the icky parts of you that go, oh my God, the ego of taking this pay cut and the ego of, I have to go work at Walmart or whatever else, right? But I went, okay, so the worst that could happen is I'm not good at it. I go to zero. I go get a job for, $40,000 a year, and then I build back up. And for me, once I stripped away the ego of I'm this person and I make this much money and I'm fancy and important or whatever,
Yeah.
once all that went away, I went, who do I trust? Someone I work for or me? And I went, duh.
Yeah.
And so really and then like I said, I had this great resource system of super smart friends that had worked at agencies before, that had done work, that knew what to do. I would meet people and I'd be like, I really like you. We're going to work together. I don't know what
Nice.
that looks like. And so I just had a really tight network of friends that were resources to me and continue to be resources to me.
That's super. And it just goes to show maintaining relationships, keeping those cultivating
Totally.
over time. This is what I do now. I help people build their relationships and their business networks. And everyone I talk to on this podcast tells me I built it because I kept the phone numbers. I
Hmm.
I had the Rolodex and I could call people and say, "This is what I'm doing. Will you help me? Will you introduce me to this new
Totally.
client?" And so you just one by one, you built that a pretty impressive list of clients. Like Banning Lewis Ranch, that's pretty huge.
It is pretty huge.
Yeah.
And that was based on, so you're absolutely right. I joke that my superpower is I know everyone I've ever met. And
Mhm.
so sometimes I can have a client say, hey, do you know somebody that does this obscure animation? And I'll be like, yeah, I worked with a guy 20 years ago. And I'll call and I'll be like, hey, do you remember me? So yeah, that for sure. And then, banning had came through a relationship I had, a volunteer relationship
Uh-huh.
that I had, when I was still at Comcast, I had been the volunteer sponsorship manager for the Pro Cycling Challenge and worked with Sports Corp and met my predecessor who left banning to go back to Sports Corp.
Uh-huh.
And so yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how it comes. And I didn't invent it, but there's the cliche about paying attention and keeping hold of things. And I remember a quote years ago, it's probably Zig Ziglar or somebody like that, that talks about that the measure of your class is how you treat people who can't possibly do you any good.
Yeah.
And the reality is the people we think we want to meet, the important, and they're great, but the leaders, the head of things, they're wonderful and they've done the work to get where they are. They're not generally the people getting things done. It's the layer below them or
Right.
the entry level. And, over the years, I have met people that I've met, that have been looking for a job for whatever reason. And I'll meet with anybody because I'm like, hey, I never, maybe I need them. Maybe they need me. Let's just it's an hour. It's a cup of coffee. And I've had people that have turned out to be partners of mine that have worked for me. They've turned out to go to work for people that later became clients.
Nice.
They became contractors, all that. And they're just great people. So there's that.
Oh, I love that. There's no classification, of people in the room because you never know who knows somebody else. And
Totally.
um, plus, all people have value anyway, and
Exactly.
it really helps you to see in a bigger perspective, kind of where you fall in the spectrum. Um, I'm stopped by that because I remember today I rushed out of a networking thing because it was 2 hours long and I needed to get back to the office. And I left going, I hope people don't think I'm rude, but it's it's important to make sure that you really connect with people, and it's a constant reminder. So I'm glad you brought that up. Um, as you have grown your business, started to build all of these colleagues to bolster your bench, tell me how you have managed your business systems to be stable and scalable
Yeah.
for growth.
So the nice thing when I started, um, I envisioned, because again, I'd known people in the agency business
Yeah.
that had all their eggs in one particular client basket. So one client was, 40, 50, 70% of billing. And I never wanted to be in that position. So I'd always, I'll do projects that I deem easy and simple for clients I like that are really small, that's kind of the gravy. So I have like the, $10,000 a year net revenue is maybe like the standard client. And then like if somebody generates, 30 to 40 or so, it's like, that's great. But I don't ever want something that's so high that they could say, hey, we don't use you anymore. And then I'm devastated.
You're crippled.
What's been really interesting, and it's probably not a business book strategy, but I'm always kind of, working things. Another one of the monkeys is once a year I have my meltdown. Oh my God, the numbers and the things aren't, oh my gosh, and what am I going to do? Typically it used to be like at Christmas
Yeah.
because, things would slow down going to the holidays. And then last year it was January for
Yeah.
whatever reason, but it's like, it's usually just once a year and it's a moment. And it's the moment where I forgot the relationships in the world. I forgot the people that I work with who make me successful. And I've developed this, I'm my biggest monkey on my back, which is I have to do it myself and there's nobody else. And oh my gosh. So what I have discovered is every time I have that meltdown, or I go, oh gosh, things are slow, the phone rings. And sometimes the phone rings because I call 2 or 3 people and say, hey, I haven't seen you in 6 months. Let's have coffee. And
Right.
sometimes the phone just rings, or sometimes I'll be talking to someone, interestingly enough, who's asked to see me about needing help with something, not work wise, but just I need your advice.
Mhm.
And they'll say, hey, do you know anybody that does whatever? And I'll be like, well, actually, I do that. So it's not, I mean, I suppose if I sat it down, I could say it's sort of systemizable, but it's not, when you read business books, it's like, well, you do A and then B and then C and
Right.
then X happens. And I'm like, I had a friend years ago that said, oh, you're just the original secret girl. You show up and do it and it just happens. And I don't think it's that easy. I don't think it's magical. Um, but I think it is a way of being, if that makes any
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so when I was in business a year, I've taken yoga from the same teacher for 25 years now. And she called me and asked to take me to lunch because she was starting her own studio. And she said, I really need your business advice. And she said, I really need your business and marketing advice. And I said, well, that's interesting because I run my business on the yogic principles you taught me,
Yeah.
which is, find your tribe, see everyone for who they are, see businesses, see possibilities, not blockages, right? Show
Yeah.
up as authentically as you can.
Right.
And let me be honest, I'm not always as authentic as I should be. I'm, fully aware of that. But yeah, I think being clear on what you do and what you do well. And what I do well is, it's taken me a long time to kind of synthesize this,
Yeah.
is make connections. As a good friend of mine says, I see patterns and I solve problems. And so my first year in business, I had sort of a slogan, for lack of a better word, that I used, which was that I would make somebody money, save them money, solve a problem, or fill a gap. And that has really been my, that for somebody that doesn't have time to do their own media placement, I can do that for them, saving them time to do what they're best at.
Yeah.
I can help somebody raise money through a sponsorship. When I do sponsorships for somebody, that generates the revenue that makes it easy to pay me because I'm raising more than,
Yeah.
I'm being compensated for. So yeah, my goal has always been to come as a resource to people rather than oh God, she's trying to get a check.
Right. And my husband has been sales for his whole life, and I asked him advice once on sales, and he goes, I'm not really in sales. I'm just in the business of helping people.
Right.
And as long as I see every interaction as an opportunity to help solve somebody's problem,
Totally.
then I don't have to worry about how to close the deal because they're going to want me because
Right.
I know how to take them in the right direction. And it's a
And yet it
beautiful outlet.
isn't, and I think you're exactly right. So isn't it interesting though, that sales training and so many sales organizations, the that it is the notion of talking someone into something they don't want to do,
Uh-huh.
right? That's, in my opinion, that's not really sales.
No,
It is,
coercion.
yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly that. And it's why sales has a terrible reputation. And
Uh-huh.
it's why organizations have such a hard time hiring salespeople because, again, from my perspective, they want to systemize it, like the theory, the infinite theories of monkeys typing, right? You get
Mhm.
10,000 monkeys typing, you'll get Shakespeare. You got 10,000 salespeople making 15 calls a day, you'll make millions of dollars. And I guess there's something to that. That's soul killing. Nobody wants to do that.
Right. It is soul killing, especially when you're not super excited about the product. If you're just a
Totally.
hired gun, it's really hard to get really motivated to pick up that phone. It's hard,
Yeah.
but when we pick up the phone thinking, who can I help today? It's a
Right.
very different mindset.
Right.
Now, you've talked about all of the phone numbers that you've kept from years ago. How do you keep track of all those relationships? What system are you using?
So everything's in my iPhone. I have, like I said, I know a little bit, I know enough to be dangerous about a lot of things. And I have the most random memory that my system is hiking at 6 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
and fresh air and music and 3 random dogs. Um, I do. I will have my best inspirations when I'm hiking, but I'm
Me too.
also, so in answer to your question about everything's in my phone, and I was telling somebody this morning, I had a god awful iPhone meltdown last year, not realizing that my Apple ID was my email address from when I was at Comcast. I ended up
Oh,
losing like 1,000 connections off my iPhone last
oh,
year. And
wow.
I mean, I spent weeks at the Apple store and talking to people, and apparently, so word to the wise about iPhones, that every connection or every contact you put in doesn't necessarily load to the cloud. So every so often you have to like sync your contacts.
Yeah.
Um, so technology, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, that was painful. Um,
Technology, you can't live with it. You just can't shoot it.
Right?
Yeah.
No, that was devastating. It was the tail end of last year, and I'm still periodically trying to find people, and they're not in there, and I'm going through
Yeah.
emails and all that kind of stuff to figure out where they were. And then calling people, going, "Did you introduce me to so and so? Remember that guy that we talked to that did
Uh-huh.
that thing?" You
Right.
know? So yeah, so I'd love to have better wisdom than that. But yeah, I think I'm really fortunate that I have a brain that pulls up random crap from 25 years ago. I can't remember what I did for lunch yesterday or who I
Yeah.
had lunch with, or when I meet somebody, welcome to being 60. If I see someone in the wrong context, I don't recognize them. So at the Accolades luncheon, I walked up to Camille Blakely and another woman. I was like, "Hey, I'm Carol." And she's like, "Carol, I'm your yoga teacher." And I was like, "Great, I know
Yeah.
you."
Oh, Carol, I am a yoga instructor. I've
Oh,
been
cool.
teaching for 15 years. And people who only know me from like Flying Horse Club will walk up to me and say, "Oh, Donna, I didn't recognize you with your clothes on."
Right?
It's fun. Yeah.
It is. It
I, I
is.
I get that. Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah.
Especially when you don't see people. So hiking, self-care is so important to an important instrument in our success. The hiking is one way that you take care of yourself. How else are you taking care of your whole woman, the whole Carol,
Yep.
to
Um,
excellent what you do?
so I get a massage once a month, whether I need it or not.
Yes.
Um, I have a great acupuncturist who um, I just adore her on the human level. And so when I don't see her regularly, but when something gets twingy or whatever, and um, so the things that I love to do for me, I am a huge dedicated thrift shopper. I love thrift shopping. And
Me too.
so
Mhm.
once a week, once a month, I'll go buy stuff I don't need, but because it's recycled and inexpensive, it's like I can go spend 50 bucks and, and then cycle through it. And then
Mhm.
the other thing is, and I haven't done it this year, I love to travel by myself. So as the business has got busy, I haven't been able to do as much.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, I turned 60 this year and I wanted to do kind of a
Congratulations.
hiking tour in Nepal. And I don't think it's happening till next year. But
Yeah.
I think in late October, early November, I'm going to take a week off, and only a week because I just don't have that much time.
Yeah.
And either go to Mexico or go to Utah to hike the slot canyons.
Okay.
So it's the only time, last year I went to Bali for 2 weeks, and I've been to Thailand and Cambodia. And I don't have a plan. I buy a ticket and I buy the first night's hotel, and then I have no idea where I'm going after that. And it is the
Nice.
most freeing, empowering, terrifying thing to do, right? Because you don't
Love
speak the
it.
language. And but yeah, that is that
Ah,
is my jam.
your adventure. I love that. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful picture and a great challenge just to take things outside of the comfort zone.
Oh yeah.
That is a really neat idea. Oh, I wish we had more time to chat, but I think you've left us with enough inspiration to last us for the rest of
Well,
the
thank you.
Well, thank you so much for giving your time to share your story because this is why I do this. I think it's important for us to ask, how did you become so successful? Because other women are designing their own path and you are making
Hmm.
a huge difference in other people's lives. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. This was cool.
And friends, this has been the Crazy as Usual podcast with Donna. You can find it on LinkedIn and my Crazy as Usual newsletter or at Crazy as Usual with Donna on Instagram. come back next time and we'll keep it crazy, brilliant, and free.